Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening. Uh, First of all, Happy New Year, everyone. Myself, Rohini. I'm a part of the IWA specialist group on lakes and reservoir management. This is our first webinar after we had become a part of this IWA specialist group. We first welcome all of you who has joined online today and part of this webinar. And now I will hand over the session to a moderator, Akanksha. So she will be moderating this whole session, and she will also introduce the all the speakers here. Akanksha, handing over to you. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Rohini. Thank you, everybody, for joining in today. And a quick introduction. I am Akanksha Agarwal, the founder of AgroMorph Technosolutions, which is a startup working in the bioremediation domain. We're very excited to have two speakers from the bioremediation sector who will be sharing with us case studies and talking to us about real life experiences in terms of challenges and opportunities using bioremediation for water body rejuvenation. So I'll start by introducing our first speaker, Ms. Pooja Tendulkar. Ms. Pooja is the co-founder of Lemnion Green Solutions, which is a startup based out of Pune in India. And Lemnion basically provides tailor-made eco-friendly solutions to their clients. Pooja has extensive experience working with duckweed as a medium for wastewater remediation, and we're excited to hear from her about her experiences and how it has been in terms of on-site implementation. So, Pooja, thank you so much for being with us today, and I hand over to you. Please tell our audience a little more about you, and we'd love to hear more about your topic today.
Sure. Thank you, Akanksha, for that lovely introduction. Hi everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning, wherever you are, listening to us from. And I'm Pooja, and I founded Lemnion about 6 years back. It is actually a startup which has ventured out from my college laboratory, where I actually did a couple of what do you call experiments in the laboratory, and then now it has become a full-time commercial venture. So happy to be introducing my journey as a researcher of 5 to 6 years, and then an entrepreneur for about, I would say, 7 odd years now, and an individual consultant in between, to experiment and check how good I am at bioremediation. So that is pretty much about me. Also, after we started Lemnion, right now we have presence all throughout India. We're also planning to do some work outside of India in the South Asian region right now. And through that, we are trying to implement bioremediation for wastewater treatment and for water body rejuvenation. So I think without further delay, I will get started. I will try sharing my screen. And we definitely have a Q&A at the end of the presentation. So you can definitely note down your questions and I can answer those. Okay, so let's get started. Uh, Talking about today's topic, which is about bioremediation of water bodies, I decided to choose a broader umbrella of nature-based solutions, and believing that bioremediation is a subset of nature-based solutions. So I'll be using this term nature-based solutions quite often, and I'll also make it a point that how is that relevant to bioremediation as and when I move to the next slides. So what will I cover today? So today I'll be talking about why are we thinking about nature-based solutions, or why are we looking at biological ways of treating a water body or rejuvenating a water body? What exactly is nature-based solutions? A case study of a river rejuvenation project that I'll be talking about, a couple of takeaways, and then we'll be heading to the Q&A. So yeah, let's get started. So why are we talking about nature-based solutions? So I think most of the situations or the location that we are staying in currently, these are the particular challenges that we see. One is water scarcity. Another is, even if there's no scarcity, there is another issue of water quality getting deteriorated. It can be in the surface water bodies, it can be in the groundwater tables, in most of the water sources that we have. So if we have to look at a water body, and if we look at the water quality getting deteriorated, it is also affecting the loss of biodiversity. There's a lot of loss in the flora and the fauna that we see. And apart from that, a lot of other microclimatic zones that are there, both in aquatic as well as terrestrial ecosystem around the water body. So this is a very primary observation that we see in most of the water bodies. And the reason being, because the biodiversity is lost, because the water quality is not great, the basic ecosystem functions or services of that water body is not happening in the proper way. And because of this, I also believe that the human health, as well as any living being, the direct beneficiaries or the indirect beneficiaries of that water body, the health of them is actually compromised. And all of this is actually creating, climate vulnerability. And that's the reason I think talking about nature-based solutions or bioremediation plays a vital role. But what exactly is it? Why are we talking about it? So a crisp definition would be using non-traditional ways to address environmental problems using natural resources. So by natural resources and by bioremediation, I mean it can be any biological component. It can be a plant where you call it as phytoremediation. It can be algae where Deepak will be talking next. It can be phycoremediation, or it can be anything related to bacterial cultures or any other natural components that are available. And how do we do it? How do we actually utilize it? So it can be done in three ways. One, it can be directly inspired from the nature, where you look at it and you believe, okay, this is something that can be done, and then you design and plan a bit around it, you modify it a bit. The other way of doing it is also inspired from nature, but at the same time you use a bit of engineering, making it a point that you're very conscious of your energy intensive usages and other usages where you're not harming the environment in some way. So that's another way of doing it. And the third way I believe of doing it would be an exact biomimicry, where you use a particular model as a reference model and you mimic exact same things while you are rejuvenating a water body. So while we are doing this, there are, the top four benefits is what I believe that are there. One is, since we are using most of the materials which are locally sourced, and since we are doing it with the local communities, it becomes cost effective. It doesn't have anything which is energy intensive, or it doesn't have anything that has huge mechanical components in it. So that makes it very cost effective. At the same time, since most of the materials are naturally sourced and locally sourced, it naturally becomes sustainable because they are available day in, day out. And that's the reason the monitoring and maintenance of that particular intervention also becomes easy. At the same time, they are also resilient. So since it is locally sourced and it is natural, another bit also is, if there is change in weather conditions, if there are changing rainfall patterns, anything, it becomes easier for those to adapt well, or that's why they are resilient. And at the same time, since they are part of the ecosystem itself, it also helps in enhancing the biodiversity. It can be flora, fauna, fungi, algae, anything that is there in that particular vicinity. So that's the reason we are talking about, using natural methods of rejuvenating a water body. So this is something that I think is a background. And now, without the further delay, let me come down to our case study. So I'll be talking about a river rejuvenation project today. This river is it's, it's somewhere close to about 500 odd kilometers from Mumbai city in Maharashtra in India. And the project that we worked on within the political boundaries of a particular village called Kauthemankar in Sangli district. This is in Maharashtra, India. So this particular project, we actually chose a site of about 2000 meters, which is a 2 kilometer long stretch. And in that, to give you a context, the entire village had a population of about 2,500, about 25,000 people. We also try to understand what are the river boundaries like, what are the land data ownerships like, what was the historical evidence of that particular river as well as the village. We also try to understand the importance of the river and multiple other things. So that is how the initial conversation for this particular project began. The next steps then involved these three major highlights. We try to understand the baseline of it, where water quality monitoring was done. We try to understand what are the other sections that are there through, let's say, drone mapping or through primary data collection, and then interpreting it as secondary data. Also talking to the local stakeholders. So multiple other things were done. And then as part of execution, horticulture work, Civil related work, and some kind of community engagement practices were done. This is just a brief. I will talk about the details in the coming slides. And then, as part of monitoring, taking care of the plants, doing multiple surveys again to monitor the change in the biodiversity or the water quality, and similar baseline informations were monitored again. And at the same time, as the season changed every quarter, uh, the plantations and the rest of the interventions were taken care as part of maintenance and monitoring. So this is how it got started. And these were the multiple surveys that we did. We did mapping, we did ecological survey, and we spoke to the people, we tried to understand their challenges. So the most important part that we believed while we were doing this was to understand why are we doing this rejuvenation project. At the same time, to understand a complete holistic approach through multidisciplinary way, where trying to understand the ecology, which are majorly the bioindicators of basically are something that is there around the water body, and at the same time understanding the water levels, understanding the water quality, quantity, all of that stayed very important while we were planning something. So once the surveys were done, this is something that we found out. There were eutrophication, there were multiple other wild plants growing, there were point source ways of sewage pollution, the solid waste. So this is how the problems were identified after the surveys. So we tried to understand, that there was no awareness. There was a lot of sewage disposal through multiple locations where there were encroachments. There was solid waste dumping, there was sewage disposal. At the same time, there was sludge accumulation since no work was done in that particular area for a long time. And since this was a drought prone area, all the water that you see in the water body was only gray water. And in some cases, there was also black water. So all this water that you see is actually gray water. So along with this, we also saw that because the gray water came in continuously, the nutrient levels actually rose in that particular water body. That led to eutrophication. So multiple, plant species, aquatic, semi-aquatic, terrestrial, were seen where they were wildly growing because the water had huge amount of nutrients in it. So these were the challenges that we kind of identified and particularly decided what not to do when we are actually implementing the rejuvenation steps. So one important step was, since we are sticking to nature-based solutions or the methods of bioremediation, we decided that we are definitely not using cement and concrete. We are definitely going to be using everything that is locally sourced and made using local materials. Uh, so that's one. And along with the local materials, natural materials for sure. Another bit was also, since cross section is the most important part when you are considering water flow regulation and flood mitigation. So that was also decided. Apart from that, when we considered using bioremediation methods, we decided not to use chemicals and to use bacterial cultures in some sections where sludge degradation could be done. But it was also done with an intention that these microbial cultures are not invasive. So they don't create any, hazard or any issues in the downstream sections of the river. So that was one. And then the last part was not to use mechanical components or energy inducive methodologies or technologies. So what did we decided to go ahead with? So we decided to go ahead with nature-based solutions, which included regulating the water flow using methodologies of phytoremediation and bacterial culture remediation. At the same time, using local materials, like I've been, constantly stressing it on, stabilizing the banks, preventing erosion in some other way, looking at the riparian vegetations, improving the biodiversity of that particular location, and keeping it minimal maintenance and low energy requirement kind of an interventions. So this is how we decided what to do, what not to do. And then now I'll quickly take you to what we started doing. So the first step was to get in touch with the stakeholders, which are either direct or indirect beneficiaries. And that's where these two entities, this NGOs actually helped us with implementing everything, planning everything, helping us coordinate with the local stakeholders. So these were the local stakeholders that were involved. At the same time, once we understood the local stakeholders, the actual planning and designing began, where you can see a long list of domain experts that actually helped us in planning and designing. So it was a huge process where, influencers, scientists, data scientists, ecologists, botanists actually helped us to plan the entire project well. So once the planning and designing was done with the help of domain experts and local stakeholders, this is how the execution work actually began. So as I mentioned in the initial slides also, that a huge amount of sludge was present in that particular water body. So the most important part was to utilize it on the banks and make it a point that the banks are stabilized. At the same time, this also helped in improving the cross section of the water body, which helped in water flow regulation, and at the same time it also helped in flood mitigation because the cross section was increased to a larger extent. At the same time, along with excavation work or civil work, what we also tried doing was we tried making these in situ water treatment systems right next to the confluence of the grey water discharge section and the river. So this actually helped in partial water treatment. Moving on to the next part that we also tried doing. So one part was we tried making these in-stream structures inside the water body. This was made, as you can see, that these are all free-flowing bunds. So depending on the flow of the water body or the flow patterns and the cross-section that is there or the meanders that are there, the shapes were decided and the sizes were decided. These were made particularly to regulate the flow, so there is no stagnancy in that particular location. At the same time, it was also made with an intent that the biodiversity can be flourished in that particular area. So that is how it was done. And because of this, we actually could see that there were fish breeding and feeding pockets that were created. There were birds who could actually come and feed on those fish. So there was a lot of nutrient balance that actually happened in that particular area. And along with that, there was some kind of bank stabilization methodologies that we also used here, which included using geotextiles or doing some kind of plantations which will basically enhance the riparian vegetation so that the soil erosion will also happen, and at the same time the whole water body will also have a very stabilized banks. And this was done using all the local labor, which had both the genders, as you can see, where the work was dedicated between the local stakeholders that were there, depending on the skill sets that they had. And along with that, along with the bank stabilization methods and other interventions, we also tried getting in touch with the community, where we told them the importance between rejuvenation and cleaning. So how different are we trying to do something here? So that was one. And this was done using multiple stakeholders. So as you can see, there were college and school students, then there were people from different communities, there were people from different occupations. So that is how we identified and mapped stakeholders, and the community engagement was done. This actually helped in generating sense of ownership between the local stakeholders. So when all of this was done, what was the impact that we found out? So one most important impact was there was a lot of livelihood that was generated around this. So people actually learned a lot about rejuvenation using bioremediation methods, making in situ water treatment systems, inoculating bacterial culture. So there were multiple things that they learned. At the same time, when the project was executed, after it was handed over to the local community, the ULBs and the politicians, these people actually were part of the monitoring and the maintenance group. So they could actually take care of the water body through the sense of ownership. So that was the best part. Apart from livelihood generation, there were other recreational areas which actually started happening. You can see there is a community who actually came here to fish in a couple of sections. There were some people who actually came here to take pictures. There were people who actually got in some food stalls and some recreational setup. So people could actually come sit right next to the water body, enjoy the new transformation that they were able to see, because this was a drought prone area, so it was difficult for them to understand the importance of water. They have never seen such amount of clean water before. I think that was another interesting part that we saw here. You can also see clearly in this picture, which where there are people actually sitting next to a water body. So this is a transformation that we saw. This was a visual transformation. Now let's get into the scientifics of it. So we also did ecological monitoring, where we understood that there are several pollinators that have started coming in. So there were damsel flies, there were dragonflies, different kinds of bees and butterflies that actually helped in pollination. And because of that, there were also birds that started coming in because the flowers a lot of trees started flowering and fruiting. So once we did that, we also tried to understand how much carbon we sequestered through the plantations that we did along the banks. And this is the number that we got. So this was about the biodiversity part. Now let's talk about the water quality. So what exactly happened to the water quality? So as you can see, this particular section is actually one of the point sources for grey water, and it actually passed through these kinds of multiple in situ water treatment systems that we made in multiple confluent sections of the river. And through this, we also saw that the partial water treatment happened. And this was done with a combination of in situ water treatment using plants as well as bacterial cultures and several other media that was found in the local regions. At the same time, this water that you see here is all treated water. This was the situation in the summers. So you can totally see that how drought prone area this particular picture actually depicts. And here, these are some more in situ water treatment systems that we made. And here, particularly, 8 lakh liters of water was treated on a daily basis. So this is something that we found out. So to what extent the water quality was treated? So the most important part, as you know, for a water body is the dissolved oxygen. And here we could see that the dissolved oxygen was about 7 ppm. And it was an amazing, I mean, it actually fluctuated anything between 6 to 7, 6 to 7.5, it kept changing. But this is something that we actually got in most of the cases. And then apart from that, these were the flow measures that we saw that, we actually got about 12 lakh liters of water flowing post monsoon. So that was another part that we could also retain a lot of water in most of the sections. And we also got to know that because of these multiple measures, the water quality was not only improved, but the water quantity and retention was also, better. That was another reason that the floods in these particular regions were also mitigated to some extent. So these were the couple of things that we saw. And this particular work was also featured in multiple social media platforms. So this is one of the case studies that I thought maybe I should share with you, that it was shared through the Better India. So that is all about the case study. So these are the quick impacts before I finish my presentation for today. Like I mentioned, flood mitigation was an important part once we finished the case study. So that is something that we realized. At the same time, since there was no cement, no concrete used, there was no chemicals and electricity used, the OPEX of this particular thing was reduced to less than 50% of conventional methods used in such kind of interventions. Another bit also was that the water which was treated was actually reused in most of the sections for irrigation. At the same time, the biodiversity was improved, which you could have seen in the pictures. And since this was a community inclusive model, it actually definitely helped the community to learn a lot of things, to upskill in most of the sections, and also generate livelihood throughout the process. So to sum it down, the takeaways for this presentation would be a holistic approach is definitely a key when you are designing a water body rejuvenation project. You definitely have to think not only about the water in the water body, but also other components which are there, which are direct or indirectly associated with the water body when it comes to ecosystem functions of the water body. At the same time, when you're looking at rejuvenating a water body, the approach has to be multidisciplinary, where ecology, hydrogeology, data sciences, photography, statistics, and multiple other things need to be understood when you are planning, designing, and executing the project. At the same time, even if you have amazing ideas, the most important part is to fit into the shoes of the beneficiaries, because they are going to be the ones who are going to experience the transformation that we are going to bring in through the technology that we are using. So that's the most important part. And two last things, even if you have amazing designs and amazing models, always have a look at the biogeographic zones that you're working in. So if you're working in a particular tropical area, you have to understand the biodiversity around it, the water quality that needs to be maintained, the water temperatures that needs to be maintained, the kind of zones that need to be created. So all of that is extremely important, the biogeographic zones. And last but not the least, whatever area you're working in any tier 2, tier 3 district that you're working in, always remember a tiny water body that you rejuvenate using bioremediation methods are definitely going to create larger impacts. Because the United Nations Decade of Restoration suggests that this is the only decade that we are left with if we want to restore our water bodies. So I believe the tiny efforts that you are taking in your own area would definitely align with the Sustainable Development Goals and the decade of restoration that we are already in. So thank you so much for listening. And if you have any questions, I think I'll take those. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Pooja, and thank you for emphasizing, the aspects towards implementation of such a project. We'll like to open it up for a quick Q&A. If there are any particular questions that you would like to ask on the call, you can raise your hand or you can put it up on the Q&A post. And if not, Pooja, there were a few questions we got, through our registrations.
There is
One of them,
question I also see in the chat here. So there's one that they asked that what is the duration of the rejuvenation and
yes,
what are the challenges that we face? So I think I'll take the challenges part first. So like I mentioned, which we already see that solid waste was a major challenge. And along with that, working with the local communities was another challenge because people don't really have an awareness that, bioremediation is a technology and that can be actually used when we live in the world of AI and IoT. That's the most difficult part. So I think that was these were the two major challenges dealing with the awareness part when it comes to technology. And another part was also trying to tell them that along with awareness, patience is extremely important because bioremediation or any kind of nature-based interventions that we do takes its own time. But once it is acclimatized, it can do wonders. So even if there is change in any weather conditions, it will definitely quickly adapt to it. So those were the challenges. Looking at the duration, the time that it took to rejuvenate this water body, execution time was about, I would say, 4 to 5 months. But we actually started getting better results after 1 or 2 years. So I think it's still a slow process. I can't say that the work is complete. It's a ongoing process where stakeholders send us pictures of migratory birds coming in and large fishes coming in. So it's a slow process and it's an ongoing process. So yeah, that is pretty much
perfect.
answer your question.
And we have a question, I think, Avdut Deshpande. Are you trying to ask a question there? Sir, you are on mute.
Yes, hello everyone. Okay,
Yeah.
you go first.
You mentioned something about the eutrophication, right?
Yeah.
I mean, on around that so-called the water source, which is, I mean, mixed with so many things, so become having speed where it knows, so you can't call it the river. So, but what was the sources for eutrophication?
Okay. So the sources that we identified through the water quality analysis that we did was majorly, nitrates and phosphates that came in from the cleaning and the washing agents, because there were no industries in the upstream section of that particular tier 3 district. So it was majorly everything that came in from the households or the residential areas, and it was majorly cleaning and the washing agents is something that we identified.
I mean, substantial residential area is around there.
Yes, most of it was only residential area. There were no industrial areas or let's say small industry sections on the upstream of that particular location.
Right. Because if I'm not mistaken, then that type of there you have the something like sandy loam soil areas there, and if you take the vertical section of that area, normally you don't have that much drainage pattern you observe, because I have worked in that area for some other reason, not for this reason. So if you take the vertical section of the, any area around that, the it doesn't support any drainage as such. I mean, subsurface flow. So that's what I was. I mean, rather curiosity how it entered into the because as you, even if there is a surface that is phosphate sulfides from the different soaps and all that, when it passes through the profile of this subsurface area, there are various minerals that have a strong absorption of these materials. So maybe, I
So
mean,
maybe
maybe your
what I
area
would like
is.
to do right now is maybe I would like you to pause a bit because
Yeah.
the audience that we have here doesn't really understand the domain expertise that you have. So I might request you to get in touch with the organizers, and you can always write an email to me where I
Yeah,
can answer your question particularly.
yeah, yeah.
So
In
I'm
fact, so
sorry
we
to.
we'd love to get
Yes.
you in touch with Pooja offline. We'll move on to the next question then. Pooja, there's a question regarding what materials did you use for the bioremediation?
Yeah. Yeah, so like I mentioned in the initial sections also, we used a lot of local materials. So depending on the different kind of contaminants or the nutrient sources we had, different kinds of materials were used. So there were, let's say, a variety of plants that we had used when it came to phytoremediation. So it ranged from, let's say, creepers, crawlers, shrubs, herbs, to up to, let's say, canopy trees, a variety of phytoremediating plants. Along with that, when we came across sludge in particular sections, we also identified that these particular sections actually had particular type of contaminants where different kinds of bacterial cultures could be used. So consortias were made in a way where the sludge could be degraded in that way. So yeah, depending on the contaminants we had, we decided what kind of bacterial cultures to use, what kind of plants to use, and at the same time what kind of interventions to make. So basically in the previous slides, if you could have seen the structures that we had made were also done with the similar intention that the water could also be treated to some extent. It could also help in flow regulation where the aeration could also happen. And then this was then uptaken by the bacterial cultures and the plants that we had. I hope that answers your question.
Great. Thank you
Okay,
so
thank
much
you,
for that,
Pooja.
Pooja.
Yeah.
Yes,
Sorry,
somebody's
Agarwal. Thank
talking
you
there.
so much,
Yes.
Pooja. Thank you. Maybe I will do a mail to you so that I can write down the materials, because I noticed that when it's green solutions. You use plants, right? So that means in this bioremediation, you used phytoremediation too.
Yes. So it
Can we
was
say
a
that?
combination of phytoremediation as well as remediation using bacterial cultures and
Okay,
materials which
beautiful.
are available, like let's say gravel, aggregates, rocks, soil. So it was a combination of multiple nature-based components that we had. So we
Okay,
tried
I'll do you
using
a
all
mail.
the biopaths in the remediation. Yeah.
Okay, good. I'll do you a mail, and then we can now talk and discuss further. Okay.
Look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a nice presentation. I enjoyed it, even though I joined late, but I enjoyed it.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Yeah.
Thank you
Thank you.
so much for those questions, and thank you, Pooja, for your time today. Really appreciate your inputs. With that, we'll move on to our next speaker, Dr. Deepak Gola. So Dr. Deepak is the technical director at Trinity International, which is a startup working specifically on phycoremediation based out of New Delhi in India. He is an environmental consultant and has a PhD in environmental biotechnology from IIT Delhi, which is the Indian Institute of Technology. With his background in phycoremediation, Deepak, we are very excited to understand more about the work that you have done, the on-site implementation of phycoremediation, and the challenges that you may have faced. So, with that, I hand over to you. And could I request you to please keep your presentation short, because looks like we have a lot of questions. So, it'll be nice to have a more interactive session. Thank you.
Okay, fine. Thank you, Akanksha, for such a nice introduction. So I'm quickly moved to I did my PhD from IIT Delhi in heavy metal remediation through fungus. But during my PhD, I learned about the algae, and now I am utilizing that part-time knowledge to a full-time job. So moving towards my presentation. So today I will talk about the phycoremediation technology along with the case study that we have done in Ayodhya. So, Akanksha, my screen is visible?
Yes, we can see your screen. If you can move to slideshow. Yes, that's perfect.
Yeah, yeah. So this phycoremediation technology is a sustainable technology, and we use this technology to regenerate the ponds, lake, river, and industrial drain and domestic drains. So the main soul of the algae and how algae work, you can think like a small algae is a small plant that plant use sunlight to grow. Similarly, the algae use sunlight to and use atmospheric CO2 to grow during its metabolic process. And during this metabolic process, it utilizes various nutrition that is present in the water as a pollutant. So algae will grow in a symbiotic nature with bacteria, and algae will during its process while taking the CO2 will release the oxygen into the environment, and bacteria which is in a symbiotic relationship with the algae utilize those oxygen and decompose the organic load, which is organic load, or you can say the pollutants such as nitrate, phosphate, or any other pollutant in terms of COD, BOD, to the new in term and mineralize those COD, BOD, or organic content or inorganic pollutant and utilize them as a food and uptake those nutrient to grow more and more. So this is a carbon negative technology as it sequesters CO2 from the atmosphere and does not require any harsh chemical, because the food which is the pollutant which is present in the drain or wastewater act as a food. So we don't require any like addition of some other nutrient from outside. So during the phycoremediation technology, when we utilize algae, uh, biomass which is produced during the process is can be utilized for the various processes, multiple purposes. For example, it can be used as a biostimulant or biofertilizer or aqua feed, or you can use that algal biomass to produce biofuel or bioenergy. So the process of treatment, because we are utilizing algae as an inoculum for the treatment of wastewater, and we are utilizing that biomass as an end product and using that treated water for various purposes. So it is a circular economy with no harsh chemical, no heavy machinery, eco-friendly setup, and it's a carbon negative technology. So today I will talk about a small case study that we did in Ayodhya. And Ayodhya, there is a place called Lal Dighi Talab. So this talab is bifurcated into 5 different ponds. So it received the domestic sewage, and Ayodhya is a very historical place in India. I think everyone heard about it because it's a historical and religious significance and cultural heritage. And due to the Hinduism, the Shri Ram, it's a very big mandir that was constructed recently, and it is open for the Hindu, and it's a very big tourist attraction in India. So there are multiple problems that are associated with this Lal Dighi Talab. So it was receiving a heavy organic load from the nearby residential area. So the COD BOD was on higher side, and it is a stagnant body. So there was prevailing anaerobic condition that was releasing bad odor, and there was very low DO due to heavy eutrophication, or you can say algal bloom. So all the parameters such as nitrate, phosphate, BOD, COD was above the prescribed limit of the Indian government body, polluting government body, and there was zero aquatic life, and there was this talab was inside a park. So due to the bad smell and due to the stagnant body, and so no one was visiting this place. So there was no screening for the non-biodegradable trash that was entering into the talab. There was no screening from the government body. So we do some. So these were the condition of the talab. before treatment. As you can see, there was full of water hyacinth, and it was receiving this. It was receiving the domestic wastewater from this. There was a settling tank, and this settling tank was taking all the domestic wastewater to this talab. Fine. And after you can see that due to the heavy organic and inorganic load, the talab was full of water hyacinth. So these were the initial parameters. For example, the pH, COD, BOD. So you can see the BOD was 70 mg per liter. DO was very minimal, 0.81. Nitrate was on a higher side. The nitrate and phosphate, due to the domestic, they use domestic sewage, that because it contained the soapy and the detergent wastewater, and there was a grassy smell due to the water hyacinth, and the color was blackish, and you can see the fecal coliform also was on the higher side. So this is the overview of the Lal Dighi Talab. I was saying that it was divided into the 5 different parts. So in the pilot project, we take this L1, the one part, because the cost that was given to us was very less, and we have to showcase our technology to the governing body. So we take the smallest one due to the fund constraints. And so what we did, this is the initial condition of the talab. There was no bar screen, and the domestic waste was directly entering into the park lagoons. So there was non-biodegradable trash all over the talab, and there was a eutrophication. So what we did, we define problems and identify the issues. And what we did, in the first step, we put the bar screen that was very much necessary to stop the incoming non-biodegradable trash. Thereafter, we inoculate the talab with the native algae, diatoms, and bacteria, and we dose these through the motor pump. And we utilize air compressor to desludge the sludge that was settled from years, because it was blackish in nature. And then we pass all this water through a sand filter, and we also used floating fountains to aerate the water, because the moving water is always clean, and the water which is stagnant get degraded with time if it is receiving organic or inorganic load from the nearby residential area or industrial area. So what we did, we put bar screen to avoid the entry of any non-biodegradable trash into the lagoon, and we remove the water hyacinth using manual things. And thereafter, we use bacterial culture as well as algal consortia to dose the culture into the pond. And you can see that we dosed, and this is the floating fountain, and this is after what we receive the result after treatment. You can see this is the second one, the second lagoon, which is not given to us due to the fund constraint, but within this fund we able to treat all these, this lagoon one, and this is the view after the treatment. These are the results that we obtained within the operation of 1 month. The BOD was from 70, it was reduced to 13 mg per liter. COD was 145 mg per liter, reduced to 40. And there was a huge reduction in TDS, up to 50% reduction. Then TSS also reduced. There was an improvement in the DO from 0.81 to 4.5. And there was a algae take organic phosphate and nitrate as a there was huge reduction in phosphate and nitrate also. So this was the water initial sample you can see, and after treatment it was like this. So we take the survey also from the nearby people. This is one of the colleague that work on this pond. So what we get, that if with the help of people or with the help of NGO, if people wants to treat it, then there is nothing that lake, pond, river, that or drain that cannot be like uh, become clear or become regenerate. We can regenerate it. It can become very much clear. There is another study with the Lakshmi Talab in Jhansi. So this was the initial condition, and after treatment you can see the huge improvement in the there was no non-biodegradable trash, there was no water hyacinth, and the water was clear. And these are the parameters. You can see there is a up to 75% reduction in BOD and up to 78% reduction in the COD, and total coliform was also reduced by 66%. So why we use phycoremediation? The best part of the phycoremediation that it is very, very rapid. There is no use of chemical. It's cost effective, easy to set up, promotes circular economy, it captures CO2, and the best part is the end use of the algal biomass. So what is the constraint with this technology? So the disadvantage using this technology that sometimes that we face is the requirement of land if we want to treat river, drain. So our association are is with IIT Ropar, IIT Delhi, IIT Roorkee, NIT Raipur, and Drive, that is the PSA office for the North India. And these are the people that we work with. And thanking you. So if you have any queries regarding the technology, you can ask the question from me.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Deepak. And with that, we're open for any questions that the audience may have for the speaker. You can raise your hands or you can unmute and ask the question if there are any. So, Dr. Deepak, I'll highlight one or two questions that were part of the registrations that we got for the webinar. One of them focused on removal of water hyacinth and how to actually control that within a water body. So, can you comment on your personal experience with removal of water hyacinth from a contaminated water body? And do you see the reoccurrence, or is there any way of stopping the growth of water hyacinth in a water body?
So the first of all, we have to find the cause. The main cause of the water hyacinth is the pollutant, the nitrate and the phosphate. So if we reduce that nitrate and phosphate in the background, you will not find the water hyacinth in front of the water body. So if we want to remove the water hyacinth, you have to remove it like 100%. And if there is like what I can say, if there is only a one root is available or one spore is there of water hyacinth in the water, it can again regenerate. But if it is managed properly, you can say if we constantly work on the like after every 2 months there is a cleaning, or after 1 month there is a cleaning. So you have to do a proper cleaning in a like proper manner, so it will not grow again. Further, the water hyacinth, whenever it is removed, you can see I have seen that in the some part of the river, whenever there is a cleaning, manual cleaning, what they do, they clean the water hyacinth from the river and put near the bank. So whenever there is a there is air or there is some strike by some person or there is something, it drop back into the water. So we have to remove that water hyacinth, and there are multiple studies, and we are also doing it in our lab, that it can be utilized for various purposes. For example, it can be used to produce some biomaterial, biodegradable biomaterial. So you can utilize that water hyacinth to produce some biomaterial product. So
Perfect.
there is one way only to reduce the water hyacinth is to either remove the organic load, or either you just remove the water hyacinth once and do the regular cleaning that I have
Perfect.
faced till now.
Perfect. So the next question we have on the chat is, does phycoremediation have the potential to help with the removal of heavy metals? Can you mention some
Yes.
strains which are most effective for this purpose?
Yeah, there are multiple studies, and my PhD work was also on removal of heavy metal. There are multiple species, for example, chlorella, Sandesmus, spirulina, that can remove heavy metal like copper, chromium, zinc, lead. So, but it depends because we have done with the work with the gold jewelry processing industry also. So it can remove gold and the silver from the wastewater also. Moreover, it can effectively remove the oil, or the what you can say, the cyclic compound that is very hard to degrade during the bioremediation process.
That's in fact interesting because when you mention oil removal, that could be a very good application for, oil spills,
Yeah,
etc. So,
so I don't know if you have gone through our recent LinkedIn post by Piyush. So we get the work from the NRL, that is the subsidiary company of Indian Oil. So we are working on their oil sludge. So from the last decade, they are using some other technology to degrade the sludge, but now we have taken a pilot project to degrade that sludge and reduce their time for degrading the sludge from 120 days to 45 days through algae. So we will start this work by the end of this January, or by the starting first week of the February.
perfect. So, we have another question by Indrani Ghosh. She is also working on algal bioremediation. She would like to know, did you measure the indigenous bacterial culture in water? Only adding algae might do the work as per my
Yeah.
experience.
So the best part of this technology that we use native culture only. So what you have to do, you have to tune the process to utilize those native bacteria so they can degrade the phosphate, nitrate, or any other organic and inorganic material at the maximum, with the maximum efficacy. So we tune the process. We don't utilize external bacteria or external algae. We isolate the bacteria or the algae from that drain or the lake or the river that we are working in.
Perfect. So, in continuation to that, we have a question on native microbes. So, how do you get the native microbes for your work? Are these specific to the environment of interest?
Yeah, why we use native? Because they are very much adaptable to the environment condition that are prevailing locally. So we collect the samples, and in our team we have Dr. Halima from the Jamia Hamdard. She do all this isolation part. I do the technique. I do give my technical input that how we will go further in terms of methodology with the upscale. So I will ask Halima one day that she should post about these native microbes and how we isolate all these things.
Absolutely. I think that has been very informative. And if there's anybody else who would like to ask a person and ask a question in person, please feel free to. We have time for one more question. So there's one question on the chat which mentions how effective is bioremediation in addressing eutrophication in lakes?
Okay, so eutrophication is sometimes confused with the algal bloom. So the eutrophication is not caused by all the algae. It is caused by the dinoflagella, and there are some cyanobacteria that cause algal bloom. So not every kind of algae cause algal bloom. So we have to identify that. Can you repeat the question?
So basically, the question is to do with eutrophication in lakes. So I think what they're trying to ask is even after your treatment, right? Because you're using algae and
So,
bacteria for your treatment, what is the after effect of the treatment in terms of the water body
so
health?
after effect, see, we utilize the native microbes, and the one the best part of using the native microbe is they are adapted to the locally placed environment. So placing GM, I have seen there is one question across use of GM algae. So there is no point of using such a highly specialized algae, because if algae which is available in the lake or the drain is able to do your work, then there is no going for the genetically modified organism. And eutrophication, the best part, the best thing that you can do with the eutrophication is just to rotate the water. You have to aerate the water and you have to rotate the water mechanically, or by using some physical force, or put some floating fountain. Then I can assure you that there will be a no eutrophication.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that, Dr. Deepak. And with that, we come to an end to our very first webinar by the specialist group on lake and reservoir management. With that, I hand over to Rohini for any closing remarks. And once again, thank the speakers, Pooja, if you're still there, and Deepak for your time and for patiently answering all the questions. Thank you so much.
Sorry, I was a little busy in the hospital with my wife, and I was not able to prepare the content I want to prepare. So I'm
No, I think
really
it
sorry
was
for it.
very informative,
Yeah.
and thank you so much, Pooja and Deepak.
Yeah, thank you, Akanksha. Thank you, Rohini. And thank you, everyone,
Thank
for
you.
joining in.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining. The recording of this webinar will be available in our YouTube channel. So we'll soon upload that, and also all the questions. We have shared already all the presenters' email ID. You can write to them. If you need more information, you can write to us and we'll connect to them. Once again, thanks everyone, and a great year. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you.